Jake Sullivan stood in the massive chamber and felt very small. The walls stretched up so high he could not see the ceiling. 12 different alien species sat in a circle around him and the other humans. Each alien looked so different from the others that Jake wondered how they could even talk to each other. Some had crystal skin that sparkled in the light. Others had thick armor plates covering their entire bodies. A few looked like they were made of pure energy floating in glass containers. Lisa Carter stood next to Jake with her hands folded behind her back. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met, but even she looked nervous in this place. The third human in their group was Ben Rodriguez, who captained the ship that brought them here. Ben kept looking around the room like he was planning escape routes, even though they were guests. The chamber itself was called Nexus Prime, and it floated in space between 12 different star systems. It was bigger than any city on Earth and had been here for thousands of years. The aliens built it as a meeting place where all the important decisions about the galaxy were made. Today, they were making a decision about humans. A tall crystal, being that sparkled blue and silver, stood up from its seat. Jake had been told this was the Zephyrian ambassador, but he could not pronounce its real name. The crystal alien spoke in a voice that sounded like music and wind chimes. But the translation device in Jake's ear turned it into words he could understand. "We have studied the humans for many cycles," the Zephyrian said. "We have watched their homeworld and learned about their biology and their culture. We have seen their technology and their social structures. After much discussion among all 12 council species, we have reached our decision." Jake felt his heart beating faster. This moment would decide if humans could join the galactic community or if they would be left alone on Earth forever. He looked at Lisa and saw that she was recording everything with a small device hidden in her sleeve. "The human species shows promise in some areas," the Zephyrian continued. "They have developed space travel and they have unified their planet under a single government. These are positive signs. However, we have serious concerns about their ability to survive in the wider galaxy." A creature that looked like a giant insect with too many arms made a clicking sound. The translator called it a Kraylon, and it spoke in a voice like grinding metal. "Humans are soft," it said. "They have no natural armor or weapons. They live for less than 100 of their years, which is barely enough time to learn anything useful. They need to breathe a specific mixture of gases, and they die if the temperature gets too hot or too cold." Another alien that looked like a floating jellyfish with tentacles agreed. "The Nexari have observed human emotions and found them unstable. Humans make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. They fight among themselves over small differences. They are not ready for the responsibilities of galactic citizenship." Jake wanted to argue, but he had been told to stay quiet and let the council finish speaking. He clenched his fists and tried to stay calm. The Zephyrian spoke again. "We do not wish to see the human species destroyed. The galaxy is dangerous and full of threats that would eliminate humans quickly. Therefore, the Council offers humans protected status. You may remain on your home world with basic technology sharing. We will defend Earth from external threats and provide guidance as you develop." Lisa stepped forward. "What if we refuse protected status?" she asked. The insect alien made a sound like laughter. "Then you will die quickly and horribly when you encounter the real dangers of space. There are radiation storms that would cook your soft flesh. There are worlds with gravity so strong it would crush your weak bones. There are hostile species that would see you as easy prey." "The offer is generous," said another alien that looked like a walking tree. "Most species that achieve space travel are given no protection at all. We are making an exception for humans because you remind us of ourselves when we were young and foolish." Ben Rodriguez finally spoke up. "How long would this protection last?" "Until you evolve or develop technology that makes you less fragile," the Zephyrian replied. "Perhaps in 10,000 of your years, you will be ready to join the galaxy as equals." The council session ended, and the humans were escorted back to their ship. As they walked through the corridors, Jake could hear the aliens talking about them. They spoke as if humans were children or pets that needed to be kept safe. Some made bets about how long humans would last if they were allowed to explore space freely. The most optimistic guess was 50 years before extinction. Back on their ship, Ben started the engines while Lisa uploaded her recordings to the quantum transmitter. Everything they had seen and heard would be sent back to Earth in minutes. Jake stared out the window at the massive station as they flew away. Somewhere in that structure, 12 alien species had just decided that humans were too weak to survive among the stars. The question now was, what humans would do about it. Helen Morrison sat at the head of the long table in the Global Defense Council chamber. The room was buried deep under Geneva and protected by the strongest shields Earth could build. Around the table sat the most powerful people on the planet. They had all seen the recordings that Lisa Carter sent back from Nexus Prime, and none of them looked happy. "So they think we are too weak to survive in space," Helen said. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the anger underneath. "They want to keep us locked on Earth like animals in a zoo." General Rick Hayes was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from the border wars. He had fought in more battles than anyone else in the room, and he knew what defeat looked like. "Maybe we should take their deal," he said. "Protected. Status does not sound so bad. We get to stay alive and we get some of their technology." Amanda Cross slammed her hand on the table. She ran the Colonial Initiative, which had been planning human expansion to other worlds for 20 years. "That is exactly what they want us to think," she said. "They offer us safety in exchange for freedom. Once we accept their protection, we will never be equals. We will always be the weak species that needed help." Lisa Carter had been quiet since arriving back on Earth, but now she spoke up. "I have been thinking about what we saw on Nexus Prime. Each alien species was completely different from the others. The Zephyrians had crystal bodies that could process information like computers. The Kralon had armor so thick that nothing could hurt them. The Nexari could share thoughts directly with each other." "What is your point?" Helen asked. "My point is that each species became very good at one thing, but they gave up everything else. The Zephyrians are smart but fragile. The Kralon are tough but slow. The Nexari work together perfectly, but they cannot think as individuals. They all specialized so much that they forgot how to adapt." Ben Rodriguez nodded. "Lisa is right. When we were on the station, I noticed that everything was built for specific species. The Zephyrians had areas with special light frequencies. The Kralon had reinforced floors to hold their weight. But there were no areas that could work for everyone. Humans are different," Lisa continued. "We did not specialize like they did. We stayed flexible. We can live in deserts and ice fields. We can eat almost anything. We can work alone or in groups. We can think with logic or emotion, depending on what the situation needs." Amanda Cross was getting excited. "So our weakness is actually our strength. They see us as fragile because we do not have armor or crystal skin. But we can adapt to anything." Helen Morrison looked around the table. "What are you all suggesting?" "We prove them wrong," Ben said. "We go out into space and we show them that humans can survive anywhere. We do not ask for permission and we do not wait for their approval." General Hayes shook his head. "That sounds like suicide. They told us about radiation storms and crushing gravity. How do we survive things like that?" "The same way humans have always survived," Amanda replied. "We learn and we adapt and we refuse to give up. Our ancestors left Africa with nothing but stone tools, and they spread across the entire planet. They survived ice ages and plagues and wars. We can do the same thing in space." Lisa pulled up a holographic display showing nearby star systems. "I have been studying the worlds that the Council marked as unsurvivable. There is one called Kepler 442b that they say is impossible for any species to colonize. It has constant storms and shifting gravity and an atmosphere that corrodes most materials." "Sounds perfect," Ben said with a grin. "If we can make that, World work, then nobody can say humans are too weak to survive in space. Helen Morrison stood up. Are you all completely insane? You want to send people to a world that aliens with thousands of years of experience say cannot be colonized? Yes, Amanda said simply. And I volunteer to go. So do I, Ben added. And me, Lisa said. General Hayes was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and nodded. If we are going to do this, we need to do it right. I will start training teams that can operate without any alien support. We cannot rely on their technology or their help. Helen looked around the room one more time. You all understand what you are suggesting. If this fails, humans could be wiped out completely. The Council will say they warned us and they will not offer protection again. If this fails, then maybe the Council was right about us, Amanda said. But I do not think they are right. I think humans are tougher than anyone knows, including ourselves. Over the next 6 months, the Colonial Initiative worked in secret to prepare the mission. 3 ships were built using only human technology. No alien materials or designs were used anywhere. 30,000 people volunteered to go to Kepler 442b, even after being told how dangerous it would be. Tony Blake led the engineering teams that modified human equipment to work in hostile environments. He did not try to copy alien technology. Instead, he focused on making human tools more flexible and adaptable. Kelly Price trained military units that could fight and survive without any outside support. The night before launch, Helen Morrison visited the ships. She walked through the corridors and talked to the colonists. They were teachers and farmers and engineers and soldiers. They were young and old and from every continent on Earth. What they all had in common was a determination to prove that humans belonged among the stars. Are you afraid? Helen asked Ben Rodriguez as he ran final checks on his ship. Terrified, Ben admitted. But that has never stopped humans before. The 3 ships launched at dawn on a Tuesday morning. By the time the Galactic Council detected them, they were already past the point of no return. The message they left behind was simple. Humans were going to Kepler 442b and they were going to make it work. They would prove that adaptation was stronger than specialization and that the supposedly weak species from Earth could survive anywhere in the galaxy. The real test was about to begin. The storms hit 3 days after landing. Ben Rodriguez stood in the command center watching the weather sensors go crazy as winds that could tear apart buildings swept across the surface of Kepler 442b. The planet seemed determined to kill everything that landed on it, and it was doing a good job so far. How bad is it out there? He asked Sam Hughes, who was running the science teams. Bad enough that 2 of our atmospheric processors just got shredded, Sam replied. The winds are carrying particles that cut through metal like paper. And that is just the beginning. We have gravity fluctuations every 6 hours that make everything weigh 3 times normal, then drop to almost nothing. The ground itself shifts and cracks without warning. Lisa Carter came running into the command center with her clothes torn and her face covered in dirt. We just lost the North Settlement, she said. The ground opened up and swallowed half. The buildings. 30 people are trapped underground. Ben felt his stomach drop. They had been on Kepler 442b for only 1 week and already everything was going wrong. The equipment that worked perfectly on Earth was failing constantly. The prefab buildings that were supposed to withstand anything kept getting destroyed by storms or earthquakes or the corrosive atmosphere. Sir, Nicole Davis called from the communications station, I am picking up a signal from the Galactic Council. They are asking if we need rescue. Ben almost laughed. The aliens were probably watching from their safe ships and waiting for the humans to admit defeat. Tell them we are fine, he said. Are we fine? Sam asked quietly. Ben looked around the command center. Through the reinforced windows, he could see the angry red sky and the twisted landscape that surrounded their base. Half their equipment was broken and they were barely surviving each day. By any reasonable measure, they were definitely not fine. We will be, Ben said. Over the next month, the colonists learned to stop fighting the planet and start working with it. Nicole Davis led exploration teams into the deep cave systems and discovered that the underground areas were stable even when the surface was shaking apart. The caves had been carved by millions of years of storms, and they formed natural shelters that could protect the entire colony. Sam Hughes figured out that the gravity fluctuations followed a pattern based on the planet's 3 moons. By tracking the moons, they could predict when gravity would be high or low and plan their activities accordingly. During low-gravity periods, they could move heavy equipment easily. During high gravity, they stayed underground and worked on projects that did not require movement. The storms were harder to deal with until Lisa Carter made a breakthrough. She discovered that the particles in the wind were not random debris, but actually part of the planet's natural recycling system. The storms broke down dead material and carried nutrients across the continents. Instead of fighting the storms, the humans learned to harvest them for materials and energy. This planet is not trying to kill us, Lisa explained to Ben as they watched a storm approach from their underground observatory. It is just very good at recycling everything, including us, if we are not careful. The previous inhabitants probably tried to impose their own systems on the planet instead of adapting to what was already here. Previous inhabitants? Ben asked Lisa. Nodded and pointed to her latest discovery. Deep in the caves, they had found ruins of structures that looked nothing like human architecture. The buildings were made from materials that resisted the planet's corrosive atmosphere, but they were all broken and abandoned. Whoever they were, they tried to build like they were still on their homeworld, Sam said as he joined them. They made rigid structures that could not bend with the planet's changes. When the big earthquakes came, everything broke apart. The humans took a different approach. They built flexible structures that could move with the ground shifts. They used local materials that the atmosphere could not corrode. Most importantly, they built underground where the planet's surface tantrums could not reach them. By the end of their 3rd month on Kepler 442b, the human colony was not just surviving, but actually thriving. They had turned the cave systems into a comfortable underground city with farms and workshops and living areas. The storm harvesting systems provided more energy than they could use. The gravity fluctuations became useful for manufacturing processes that were impossible on other worlds. Nicole Davis had become the best cave explorer in the colony, and she made new discoveries every week. Deep underground, she found vast chambers, filled with crystals that could store energy and water sources that never ran dry. The planet had everything they needed if they were smart enough to find it and adapt to use it. Then the Krylon fleet arrived. Ben was in the underground command center when the sensors detected massive ships entering orbit. The aliens had come to rescue the humans who were obviously dying on the impossible planet. The Krylon admiral sent a message demanding that all human survivors prepare for immediate evacuation. Should we tell them we do not need rescuing? Nicole asked. Ben thought about it for a moment, then smiled. Let them come down and see for themselves. The Krylon landing party expected to find desperate humans hiding in crude shelters and begging for help. Instead, they found a thriving underground city with clean air and fresh food, and people who looked healthier than when they first arrived. The Krylon soldiers in their massive armor suits could barely fit through the tunnels that humans moved through easily. The Krylon admiral was a giant insect creature whose armor was so thick that nothing could hurt him. He looked around the underground farms where humans were growing food in soil made from storm debris. He watched children playing in areas where gravity shifted between high and low in patterns that let them fly and land safely. He saw workshops where humans were building new technologies using materials that only existed on this planet. "This is impossible," the admiral said through his translator. "Our scientists said this world could not support any form of life." "Your scientists were right about their own species," Ben replied. "But they forgot that different species have different strengths. You are tough enough to survive almost anything, but you cannot adapt when conditions change. We are fragile, but we can change to fit any environment." The Admiral spent 3 days on Kepler 442b, and everything he saw confused him more. Humans were not just surviving on the impossible planet, but they were happier and healthier than most species on there. Perfect homeworlds. They had turned the planet's hostility into an advantage and built something completely new. When the Krylon fleet left, they carried news that would shake the Galactic Council to its core. The weak species from Earth had done something that 12 advanced civilizations thought was impossible. They had made a home on a world that could not support life. The news hit the Galactic Council like a meteor impact. Species that had existed for millions of years sat in stunned silence as they listened to the Krylon Admiral's report. The humans had not just survived on Kepler 442b, but had actually improved the planet. They were building cities in places where even the toughest species would die within hours. Jake Sullivan was back on Earth when the first alien visitor arrived in secret. He was now running the Interstellar Defense Force and spending his days preparing for humanity's expansion into space. The last thing he expected was a message from the Vortani requesting a private meeting. The Vortani ship landed at night in the Nevada desert, far from any cities or satellites. Jake went alone as requested and found himself face to face with creatures that looked like tall, graceful birds with rainbow feathers and large, intelligent eyes. They were one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, but they had a problem. "We have been stuck on our home world for 3,000 years, the Vortani ambassador explained. Her voice was like singing, and the translation device made it sound almost musical. "We evolved on a world with perfect conditions, and now we cannot survive anywhere else. Our bodies need exactly the right temperature, and humidity, and atmospheric pressure. Even small changes make us sick or kill us." "What does this have to do with humans?" Jake asked. "You have done something we thought was impossible. You took a world that would kill any of us within minutes and made it into a paradise. We want to learn how you do this." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Are you asking us to teach you?" "Yes. We will share our technology and our knowledge in exchange for learning your adaptation techniques. We are tired of being prisoners on our own world." This was the beginning of humanity's first real partnership with an alien species. The Vortani were incredibly advanced, but they had become so specialized that they had lost the ability to change. They needed humans to teach them flexibility, and in return, they offered technology that was thousands of years ahead of anything on Earth. Back on Kepler 442b, Ben Rodriguez was dealing with success. Reports were coming in from 17 other human colonies scattered across the galaxy. Each group had picked a world that the Galactic Council said was uninhabitable, and each group was proving the Council wrong. The mining colony on Titan 7 was thriving despite radiation levels that would cook any known species. The humans had developed new shielding techniques and learned to use the radiation as an energy source. The research station on the ice world Hoth Beta had actually improved the planet's climate by redirecting geothermal energy and was now growing tropical plants in underground gardens. "How are they all succeeding?" Lisa Carter asked as she reviewed the reports. She was now the colony's chief administrator and spent her days coordinating with other human settlements. "Because we are not trying to make these worlds into Earth," Ben replied. "We are learning to become part of them. Every other species tries to change planets to match their needs. We change ourselves to match the planets." Sam Hughes had become the galaxy's expert on hostile environment survival. Aliens were starting to ask him for advice on worlds they had given up on centuries ago. He was working on a project to help. The crystalline Zephyrians survive on worlds with different light frequencies and teaching the Nexari how to function as individuals when their telepathic networks were disrupted. But success was bringing new problems. The Dominion Syndicate was a military alliance of 4 aggressive species that believed in galactic order through force. They saw human expansion as a threat to their control, and they were not happy about aliens coming to Earth to learn from humans. Nicole Davis was now a colonel in charge of planetary defenses, and her scouts were reporting disturbing news. Dominion ships were gathering near human space, and their communications suggested they were planning something big. The intercepts were full of words like elimination and final solution and human problem. "They are going to attack," Nicole reported to Ben during their weekly security meeting. "The question is when and where." "How many colonies could we defend if they hit us all at once?" Ben asked. "None of them," Nicole said honestly. "We were not built for war. Our settlements are designed to adapt to hostile environments, not fight off invasion fleets." Jake Sullivan arrived on Kepler 442b 2 weeks later with grim news from Earth. The Interstellar Defense Force had been tracking Dominion movements, and the pattern was clear. They were planning to attack 12 human colonies simultaneously in what they called Operation Clean Sweep. "They think they can wipe us out before we spread any further," Jake explained to the colony leadership. "They see human adaptability as a disease that might infect other species and disrupt galactic stability." "What are our options?" Ben asked. "Fight or die," Jake said simply. "The Galactic Council will not help us. Most of them are still debating whether humans should even exist. The Vortani want to help, but their ships are not built for combat." Lisa Carter had been quiet during the meeting, but now she spoke up. "Maybe we are thinking about this wrong. The Dominion expects us to fight like other species. They have studied galactic warfare for thousands of years, and they know how to defeat every type of defense." "What are you suggesting?" Jake asked. "I am suggesting we fight like humans. We do not try to overpower them or out-technology them. We adapt to them and we use their own strengths against them." Over the next month, human colonies across the galaxy prepared for war in ways that no alien species had ever seen. They did not build massive weapons or deploy huge fleets. Instead, they turned their planets themselves into weapons and their adaptability into armor. On Kepler 442b, Ben Rodriguez looked out at the storm clouds gathering on the horizon and smiled. The Dominion was about to learn why humans had survived. Ice ages and plagues and meteors impacts on Earth. They were tough to kill and they fought dirty, and they never ever gave up. The real war was about to begin, and the aliens had no idea what they were getting into. The attack came at dawn across 12 different worlds simultaneously. Dominion war fleets dropped out of hyperspace expecting to find easy targets and quick victories. Instead, they found planets that fought back in ways they had never seen before. On Kepler 442b, Ben Rodriguez watched the enemy ships descend through the storm clouds and felt almost sorry for them. The Dominion had studied human settlements from orbit and seen small colonies with simple defenses. They had no idea that the humans had turned the entire planet into a weapon. "Gravity shift in 30 seconds, Nicole Davis announced from the command center deep underground. "All units to positions." The Dominion fighters came in fast and low, expecting to strafe the surface installations before the humans could react. Instead, they flew straight into a gravity well that Ben's people had learned to predict and control. Half the fighters crashed into the ground when their engines could not compensate for the sudden weight increase. The others found themselves flying upside down and backwards as gravity directions shifted in patterns that only the humans understood. "Storm front approaching from the west," Sam Hughes reported. "Particle density at maximum." Ben smiled. The storms on Kepler 442b carried metallic particles that could shred most materials, but the humans had learned to direct and focus them. As the Dominion ships struggled with the gravity changes, a storm wall hit them like a sandblaster made of razors. Their shields failed within minutes, and their hulls began to dissolve. The Dominion admiral sent ground forces in armored suits that could supposedly survive anything. They landed in the areas that looked safest from orbit, but Nicole Davis had been preparing for this moment for months. The ground opened up beneath the invaders and swallowed them into cave systems where their heavy armor became a disadvantage and their weapons could not function properly. "Underground teams report enemy forces neutralized," Nicole announced. They are requesting permission to capture the survivors for intelligence gathering. Granted, Ben replied. Try not to damage them too much. On Titan 7, the mining colony was dealing with the largest Dominion fleet. The aliens thought radiation levels would limit human defensive options, but they had made a serious mistake. Colonel Sakifo. Kelly Price had spent 2 years learning to use radiation as both shield and weapon. The human fighters came out of the radiation storms like ghosts and hit the Dominion ships where their shielding was weakest. When the aliens tried to retreat to safe distance, they found that the entire system was flooded with radiation that their ships could not handle but human equipment used as camouflage. "This is impossible," the Dominion fleet commander transmitted, on an open channel. "How are you surviving in this environment?" "Practice," Kelly replied as her fighters disabled another enemy cruiser. The ice world Hoth Beta provided different challenges. The research station there had learned to control temperature differentials across the planet's surface. When Dominion ships entered the atmosphere, they found themselves flying through thermal layers that caused their hulls to expand and contract so rapidly that most of them simply broke apart. Lisa Carter coordinated the defense from her position on Kepler 442b, but she was also watching something else. Human colonies were not just defending themselves, but they were adapting their tactics in real time. Each world was learning from the others and developing new techniques faster than the Dominion could respond. "They are treating this like a learning exercise," she told Ben as they watched the battle reports. "Every attack teaches them something new about fighting in space." The turning point came when human forces captured a Dominion command ship intact. The aliens had never lost one of their major vessels before, and they had never imagined that humans could board and take control of superior technology. Kelly Price led the assault team that took the command ship, and what she found inside shocked her. The Dominion military was completely rigid and inflexible. They had battle plans that covered every possible scenario, but they had no ability to adapt when something unexpected happened. "Their entire command structure depends on following predetermined strategies," she reported to Jake Sullivan, who had arrived with reinforcements from Earth. "When we do something they have not planned for, they just freeze up." Jake was now Admiral Sullivan and commanded the first integrated human fleet. His ships were not the most advanced in the galaxy, but they were crewed by people who could think on their feet and adapt to anything. When Dominion reinforcements arrived, expecting to overwhelm the humans with superior numbers, they instead found opponents who fought like no species they had ever encountered. Human ships worked together in ways that seemed chaotic, but were actually incredibly coordinated. They used environmental hazards as weapons and turned their own weaknesses into advantages. When Dominion vessels tried to ram human ships, the humans simply moved aside and used the enemy's momentum to drive them into asteroids or radiation fields. "Status report," Jake requested from his flagship as the battle entered its 6th hour. "Dominion forces are in full retreat across all 12 systems," his communications officer reported. "They are requesting ceasefire and withdrawal permissions." Jake thought about it for a moment. The humans had won, but they had also learned something important. They were not the weak species that needed protection anymore. They had become something that even the toughest military forces in the galaxy could not defeat. Grant their request, he decided. Let them go home and tell everyone what happened here. The Dominion retreat was not organized or strategic. It was a panic flight by forces that had never experienced defeat and did not know how to handle it. They left behind equipment and wounded soldiers and any pretense that they were the dominant military power in the galaxy. Ben Rodriguez stood on the surface of Kepler 442b and watched the enemy ships disappear into hyperspace. The storms were clearing, and for the first time since landing, he could see stars in the night sky. Somewhere up there, the Galactic Council was probably meeting in emergency session to discuss what had just happened. "What do you think they will do now?" Nicole asked as she joined him. "They will have to accept that humans are not going anywhere," Ben replied. We proved we can survive on impossible worlds, and now we proved we can defend ourselves against anyone who tries to stop us. Lisa Carter was already working on the next phase. The war had shown that human adaptability was more than just useful for colonization. It was a completely new way of thinking about problems and challenges. Other species were going to want to learn from humans, and that was going to change everything. The galaxy was about to discover that the species they thought was too weak to survive was actually going to teach everyone else how to really live. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. The same aliens who once dismissed humans as too weak to survive now sat in stunned silence as they watched recordings of the Dominion defeat. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries had been destroyed by creatures who were supposed to die the moment they left their home world. Helen Morrison walked into the chamber with confidence that had not been there during humanity's first visit. She was older now, with gray hair and lines around her eyes, but her voice was strong and clear. Behind her walked Jake Sullivan, who now held the rank of admiral and commanded fleets that included ships from 6 different species. Honored delegates. Helen began as she took the speaker's position in the center of the chamber. I come before you not to ask for acceptance or protection, but to offer partnership and friendship. The Zephyrian ambassador, who had first rejected humanity, now sparkled with different colors. The crystal being had learned enough about human emotions to recognize irony, and it was experiencing something close to embarrassment. We owe humans an apology, the Zephyrian said. Our assessment of your species was based on incomplete data and flawed assumptions. We saw your lack of specialization as weakness when it was actually your greatest strength. You were not wrong about our biology, Helen replied. Humans are fragile compared to most galactic species. We do have short lifespans and weak bodies, and we need very specific conditions to survive. But you forgot that intelligence and determination can overcome almost any physical limitation. The Kralon representative made clicking sounds that the translator converted to grudging respect. Your species has accomplished things we thought impossible. You have colonized worlds that we abandoned as hopeless. You have defeated military forces that we feared to challenge. Because we learned to work with problems instead of trying to overpower them, Helen said. Every other species in this chamber became very good at one thing and then stopped adapting. Humans stayed flexible and kept learning. Admiral Sullivan stepped forward with a data pad containing reports from human colonies across the galaxy. We now have settlements on 47 worlds that were classified as uninhabitable. Our population in space has grown to over 2 million people. We have developed new technologies and techniques that other species are asking to learn. The jellyfish-like Nexari, floating in their containment units, pulsed with colors that indicated deep thought. We wish to understand human adaptation methods. Our species has become so dependent on telepathic connection that we cannot function as individuals. This limits our ability to explore and expand. We would be happy to help, Helen said, but not as teachers to students, as partners working together to solve common problems. This was the new relationship that humanity was offering to the galaxy, not the protected status that had been forced on them before, and not the dominance that species like the Dominion had tried to impose. Instead, humans were proposing something that had never existed before in galactic history: true cooperation between equals. Lisa Carter had returned from Kepler 442b to become Director of Galactic Sciences, and she was revolutionizing how research was conducted. Instead of each species working in isolation, she had created mixed teams, where human adaptability combined with alien specialization to achieve breakthroughs that neither could accomplish alone. Her greatest discovery was not about technology or biology, but about consciousness itself. She had proven that intelligence worked best when it was challenged and forced to adapt. Species that became too comfortable and specialized actually lost mental capacity over time. The galaxy has been stagnant for millions of years, she explained. To the Council, each species found their perfect niche and stopped growing. Humans brought change and challenge, and that forced everyone to start thinking and adapting again. Ben Rodriguez was now governor of the Kepler 442b system, which had become the unofficial capital of human space. He oversaw not just human colonies, but integrated settlements where multiple species lived and worked together. The impossible planet that was supposed to kill everyone had become a symbol of what cooperation could accomplish. Sam Hughes led the terraforming projects that were turning hostile worlds into gardens. But he was not changing planets to match specific species anymore. Instead, he was creating environments that challenged inhabitants to adapt and grow. These worlds produced stronger and more flexible populations than the perfect home worlds that most species preferred. Nicole Davis commanded integrated defense forces that included volunteers from dozens of species. Her military units did not rely on superior firepower or advanced technology. Instead, they used the human approach of adapting, tactics to match each situation and thinking creatively about problems. The change was visible everywhere. Alien species that had not expanded beyond their home systems for thousands of years were suddenly building new colonies and exploring uncharted regions. The Vortani had established settlements on 12 different worlds with human help. The Zephyrians were developing individual personalities instead of functioning as a collective mind. Even the Dominion had changed. After their defeat, they had requested human advisors to help them develop more flexible military strategies. The species that had once tried to eliminate humans were now learning from them. "What happens next?" the tree-like alien asked during the council session. "We keep growing and learning," Helen replied. "Humans will continue expanding into space, and other species are welcome to join us. We will share what we know and learn from what others can teach us." Jake Sullivan was watching the council session from his flagship, the Endeavor, which orbited Nexus Prime. His ship carried crew members from 8 different species who worked together as smoothly as any human team. They had learned to communicate, not just through language, but through the shared experience of facing challenges together. Down on the station, his daughter Katie was teaching a class of young aliens how to navigate the storm systems that had once seemed impossible to survive. She had been born on Kepler 442b and grew up thinking that hostile environments were normal. To her, the galaxy was not a dangerous place to be conquered, but an endless playground to be explored. The final session of the council ended with a unanimous vote to grant humans full membership and equal status. But more importantly, it established new principles for galactic civilization. Species would work together instead of competing. Challenges would be embraced instead of avoided. Adaptation would be valued over specialization. Helen Morrison made one last speech before returning to Earth. "The galaxy told us we were too weak to survive among the stars. We proved them wrong not by becoming stronger, but by becoming smarter. We showed that intelligence and determination and the willingness to change can overcome any obstacle." As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, they were no longer visitors asking for permission. They were full members of a galactic community that they had helped to transform. The weak species from Earth had become teachers and partners, and friends to civilizations that had existed for millions of years. The stars that had once seemed impossible to reach were now humanity's new home, and everywhere humans went, they carried the same message that had brought them so far. There is no challenge that cannot be overcome by minds willing to adapt and hearts that refuse to give up. The galaxy had learned that survival was not about being the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced. It was about being human.